All right, we're live on a Wednesday night. Panther-Lair Show. I feel like I talk to you guys all the time nowadays. Used to be we get together once a week throughout the year, and then twice a week during the football season. We'd have the live Panther-Lair Show on Wednesday nights, and then the post-game show on Saturdays after a game, and that was it. And then we started doing the weekend recap. Is that what I called it? I always forgot. I didn't want to call it the same thing as the Saturday night live bit. That was weekend update, right? So we would do the weekend recap on Monday mornings. And then it all grew into the morning pit that we do 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. But this is where it all started, though. The Wednesday night show. It used to be a Tuesday night show, and then it became a Wednesday night show. But this is where it all started, here with the Panther-Lair Show live on a Wednesday night at 8:30. Glad everybody could tune in. People were filtering in. And, you know, I'll say right off the bat, I know that I know it's tough in the wake of a loss. I know that not everybody's excited about Pitt football. Probably most sports fans are not excited about their team in the wake of a loss. And I mean, I see it, you know, I can see content numbers and things like that on YouTube, and not just our stuff. I mean, they can look at, you know, YouTube numbers for podcasts and videos that cover other college teams or pro teams, Steelers stuff. Dips after a loss. Now, if I mean, as we mentioned, the Steelers, if that loss happens to, you know, include the, you know, debut of the first round draft pick who just so happened to be a Heisman Trophy finalist in the same city, then yeah, the numbers might be up a little bit, even though it was after a loss. But for the most part, after a loss, people aren't always too excited to talk about their favorite team. And that kind of affects things, for sure. But, you know, when it comes down to it, they're still going to play every game. They're still going to finish out the season, and we're still going to cover the team. We're still going to talk about it, and we're still going to put out content, because every week we're going to talk about what went right, what went wrong, what they need to do better, and what they need to carry, you know, what they need to carry over, and where they need to improve, and what challenges the next week is going to bring. We always have the fallback to talk about recruiting. We actually have, I think, a really good recruiting episode of the Morning Pit coming tomorrow morning on Thursday, so make sure you check that out. I don't know if you can. I don't know if you know what to expect out of that one, but it's really good. It's some really good recruiting content, and I think you'll enjoy it because there has been some good recruiting news this week, even though not much else went well for Pittsburgh sports teams this week. You know, there was some good recruiting stuff on the Pitt front. You know, we always have recruiting to fall back on. There's always recruiting to talk about, but we're in the middle of a football season. There's a lot of football content to discuss. There's a lot of football to talk about. And that's what we continue to do. And so, I mean, we pumped out a morning pit every day this week. We've had 3 so far. You know, on Monday talking about where the offense goes from here. On Tuesday talking about and how they can fix the offense. On Tuesday we were talking about some of the personnel stuff and the depth chart and the 2 deep and all of that. And also looking around the Coastal, which, by the way, no matter what you thought of Saturday's game and what you thought of Pitt after Saturday's game, Coastal still doesn't look all that impressive or all that daunting to get through. You know, if you're writing off this team's chances right now, you're probably a little bit premature. I'm not saying you're not going to end up being right. You know, I'm not guaranteeing that you're wrong about that. But you might be a little bit premature just given what the rest of this division looks like. Yes, and then today on the morning pit, we talked a lot about defense and special teams. Because, look, the reality is right now, with the way Pitt's offense is playing, that margin is pretty slim. You know, there's a very slim margin for error. There's very little room for error for the defense and the special teams. I'm not going to say that they have to be perfect, but they can't be too far off of perfection with the way the offense is playing. And I mean, specifically the way the offense played on Saturday night. You only score 7 points through 3 quarters. Even giving up 9 is too much, you know, and that's an impossible standard to hold the defense to. To say that they gave up 9 points and they were losing, to give up 9 points in the first 3 quarters and to be losing, I mean, that again, that's an impossible standard to be held to, because you're not going to get through a game holding a team to 3 or 4 field goals. You're going to give up touchdowns. It's college football. It doesn't even mean you're a bad defense. You could be a pretty good defense and still give up touchdowns. This offense cannot be so inept and so ineffective that one touchdown is an insurmountable mountain to climb. You know what I mean? An insurmountable margin to close. You can't be in that position. You can't put your defense in that position. Now, special teams, I mean, the same way. You can't put the special teams units in that position where, one missed field goal is a killer, or, a little bit of bad field position is just, just end your chances on any given drive. But, as it relates to the defense and the special teams, both, they have to be better than they were in situations on Saturday night. Defense played great for 3 quarters. In the fourth quarter, they gave up 3 of 5 on third down. They allowed a 3rd and 11 to be converted with a running play. They gave up a 63-yard run right after the offense finally came alive and closed the gap to 5 points. They had another play where a guy ended up running for 20-some yards, just ran over Brandon Hill to break a long play. They had a touchdown pass. I mean, the defense had a lot of breakdowns in the fourth quarter. And yeah, they played a lot and they played really hard and they were on the field a lot and all that stuff, but they needed to make plays in that situation. And the special teams was the same way. 6 penalties on special teams is too much. Now, 4 of those were accepted because they had 2 situations where they had multiple special teams penalties called, but 3 block in the back penalties, a roughing the kicker penalty, a holding penalty. The delay of game was actually intentional. So, I mean, I'm not going to hold that one against them. But still 5. I mean, even if it's only 5, if you have 5 special teams penalties in one game, something's not working there. And Panarduzzi said after the game on Saturday that they would, I mean, he pretty much indicated that they will change personnel. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, there's, P.J. O'Brien has the running into the kicker play, or roughing the kicker is what was actually called. Jaden Bradley's had a couple block in the back penalties. Stephon Hall had one the other day. Nick Lappy had one the other day. And we'll see this Saturday if those guys are still out there on those special teams units, or if the coaches go for other players in those spots. But it all comes down to the offense and putting too much pressure on the defense and the special teams to play perfection when no one should be expected to play perfection. You should be expected to play really well. You should be expected to minimize mistakes. You should be expected to more or less do your job effectively. And if everyone does their job effectively, then you should be in position to win most of your games. And the thing I keep coming back to with this team, and particularly with the offense, but maybe it applies to the whole team, is that they have to be able to win as a whole rather than the sum of the parts. And I sort of was flashing on this ideal today, and I'm going to write about it in the 321 column on Friday. I really feel like last year, and maybe this has been only sort of made more clear in the wake of how things have gone this season, but in looking back at 2021, the success of that season was, I think, more the sum of the parts, which is to say Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. We're seeing what the absence of those guys looks like. And we're seeing, and maybe we're getting a perspective on their impact and how important they were, and even greater perspective on it than we got when they were actually here. It's like their absence is felt more than their presence ever was. And I think that team was sort of the sum of its parts. And I mean, they had good players. They had a lot of good players, and a lot of guys made big plays. Lucas Krull made big plays. There's no question about that. Obviously those outside linebackers their departure is felt. Damari Mathis was really good at corner, but it was really Pickett and Addison is the biggest difference between that team and this team. But that doesn't mean that this team can't win. It doesn't mean that this team can't be good. It just means they have to do it as a whole rather than the sum of its parts. And I really thought about that in conjunction with sort of what the expectations were for this offense, what my expectations were for this offense, what I think the Pitt coaches and players expected from this offense this season. And I really, because I spent a lot of time this week thinking back over, holy crap, and not necessarily always saying crap, but how did I get it so wrong with this offense, of what they would be able to do and what they'd be capable of? And I thought a lot about it, and what I try to do is think of, just sort of remember, okay, what was I thinking in the spring? What did I think in the summer? What did I think through training camp? What was I hearing from the Pitt coaches or people around the program? Not necessarily in press conferences, just in conversation. What were people saying about this team that led me to believe that it would be able to operate at a certain level offensively, a level that it hasn't really been able to reach consistently, or at least not stay at consistently. And I think what it boils down to is the idea of the offense sort of operating as a whole. You weren't going to have the superstar players of Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison. You had a good chance to have pretty good players, maybe even borderline really good players on offense. When we talked about Keaton Slovis and Konate Mumfield and Gavin Bartholomew and on down the list. But there wasn't necessarily going to be a superstar quarterback and a superstar wide receiver like Pickett and Addison. There weren't first-round quarterbacks and first-round wide receivers on this team. That much I think we understood. The key was, and the idea was, and the running theory was that this offense would still be able to be effective, and maybe in some instances, in some situations, maybe even more effective through the sort of collective effort, through the balance of the offense. This is what Frank Cignetti was supposed to bring. He was supposed to return balance to the offense, right? And not necessarily in making it a run-first offense or an offense that's just going to ground and pound and run the ball 50 times a game. It wasn't going to be the Western Michigan game over the course of 12 weeks. But what it was going to be was an offense that could kind of do both. And they might not be as effective passing as last year's team was, but they would be more effective running, and that would not only balance out some of the yardage gains and potentially equalize some of the threats, but it also would sort of neutralize the defenses teeing off against the pass. You would give defenses more to think about. You'd have more ways to attack defenses. You'd have more ways to go after them, and you'd give them more to prepare for, and you'd be able to work in play action, and you would have an offense that truly was multiple and versatile. And even if it didn't have the first round explosiveness, if it didn't have the first round pedigree of last year's offense, it had a chance to be almost as effective, and in some ways, again, sort of situationally more effective through that balance. This was the running theory. This was the idea. This was how it was supposed to work, and if it did work, then they would be really good. And I predicted them to go 10-2 based on the to think that it could work. You have an offensive coordinator with a history of establishing balanced offenses while still getting the ball to his playmaker. You have a quarterback who has a history of success, 60 touchdown passes against Power 5 competition, an all-conference performance, and an all-conference rookie of the year. Right? Not a guy who's just coming in with no experience, not a guy who's coming in as a freshman or coming up from a lower level or coming in having never played and wanting an opportunity after 3 years. It wasn't that. It was a guy who had played. It was a guy who had experience. The wide receiver was a freshman All-American. The tight end was a freshman All-American. The backs had been successful in their limited opportunities, and it felt like all they needed was just a chance, and they could be more effective. And then most of all, and we talked about it a lot, and I started drawing connections in 2016 and 2009, the offensive line, where you have, repeat it with me because we said it so many times, 4 sixth-year seniors and 1 fifth-year senior on the starting group all coming back. And so you put all those pieces together, all right, and you set aside all the, this or that complaint. I knew it all along. I knew they were going to stink or this or that. No, you put all those components in a pot. The way I just described them to you, which I don't think I was exaggerating or making anything up there. Everything I just said about all those players, it's factual. And you put that all together, and it seems to be a recipe for an effective, balanced, versatile offense. The kind that may or may not set records like last season, but could certainly win games like last season. And in the quantity of wins, they could put together a strong winning record, 9 wins, 10 wins, something like that. So where did it go wrong? To this point, where did it go wrong? And I think there's a few pieces of the puzzle that have been missing. Number one, all of those 6-year starters, 6-year seniors, I should say, all 4 of those guys, Carter Warren, Marcus Minor, Owen Drexel, Gabe Hoy, you know how many snaps they've taken together this season? The 4 of them on the offensive line in a game this season? Here it comes. 0. They have not played a single snap together. Gabe Hoy didn't play the first few games. I think his first appearance was The Rhode Island game, maybe. By that point, Owen Drexel was hurt. Shortly, Rhode Island game, Carter Warren gets hurt. I mean, there are games out there where all you have is Warren and Minor. I think the Western Michigan game, I think they only had Carter Warren and Marcus Minor out there. By the end of the Rhode Island game, the only ones they had were Gabe Hoy and Marcus Minor. This past game, the Georgia Tech game, out of those 4 sixth-year seniors, all they had was Gabe Hoy and Marcus Minor, with Hoy rotating in at right tackle, not even starting. So, I mean, the question of how good those guys actually are can be tabled. I think for now, I mean, it's something of a discussion to have, but they haven't even all played together. You started the season without Hoy. At this point of the season, you don't have Drexel or Warren. Drexel, I think, is going to be out for a little while. Don't know how long Warren's going to be out. So that kind of throws a wrench into things. And if we had questions about whether those guys are really as good as we touted them to be or not, I don't know. Instead of having Gabe Hoy and Carter Warren potentially getting beat off the edge, you've got Matt Gonsalves and Branson Taylor getting beat off the edge. Would Hoy and Warren be better? I would assume so, given their experience, given how they played last year. And I don't entirely buy the idea that Kenny Pickett made the offensive line look better than it did. There were times, yes, where his mobility and his scrambling and all that, keeping a play alive, he did. Maybe he did cover for some issues there. But on the whole, and it was my biggest takeaway from last season, by mid-year I was talking about this. I asked Kenny about this. He just looked more comfortable in the pocket, which he did not look that comfortable in 2020 or 2019 or 2018. And I think some of that was his maturity and his development. He could read the pressure. He could feel the pressure better. He had that internal clock working better. So he knew when to break down and get out of the pocket. He knew when the pocket was collapsing, and he knew when he had that extra time. But I think he was also getting good blocking. I think Warren was playing well. I think when Hoy was healthy, he was playing well. I think Minor did a good job, and I think Drexel did a good job recognizing the pressures and understanding what the defense was doing. Even if, like man to man, lineman to lineman, Jake Cradle might be a better prospect. But Owen Drexel's got the experience. He learned a lot from Jimmy Morrissey, and so much of that center position is just knowledge, understanding, recognition. And now you don't have that. You haven't had it for 3 games now. So that's one problem. And if you had all those offensive linemen out there, would all the issues magically disappear? I don't know. I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But we can't say. It's just a guess because we haven't seen those guys play together. And I'm not sure if or when we will see all 4 of those guys on the field together. So that's one big problem. Here's the other problem. The quarterback missed a game and a half. And I mean, I think you know what I'm going to say. And I keep promising I'm not going to bring this up anymore, but it still really pisses me off. I shouldn't say it pisses me off. I mean, this is a family podcast, and I mean, we don't typically swear. But I still think it's actually, yeah, it doesn't make me angry. It just confuses me and befuddles me about what the heck was going on in that Rhode Island game. You effectively didn't get any good work for Kedon Slovis in this passing game for really over the course of 2.5 games. So you went into the ACC opener with a game and a half for Kedon Slovis, basically. When the Rhode Island game is him throwing half of his passes behind the line of scrimmage, you went into the ACC opener against Georgia Tech with basically a game and a half. And then you sit back and wonder why the passing game was disjointed and out of sync in the first half, why he was 2 of his first 10 for 8 yards. And I asked Pat Narduzzi about that on Monday. It was kind of funny. I started a running thread on the message boards during the Monday press conference. When I'm sitting in the South Side, I'm sort of typing along. Narduzzi said this, Narduzzi said that. And in the thread, someone said, hey, will you ask him, did he think about pulling Kedon Slovis? I'm reading while Narduzzi's talking, and I'm typing, and I read it. I'm like, sure, what the heck? Hey, Pat, Kedon started off 2 of 10. Was there any point in that stretch when you thought about, he started off 2 of 10 for 8 yards, and one of those was a pass to Ryan Jacoby for 3 yards. Was there any point in there where you thought about maybe making a change just to give a spark to the offense? It seemed like a relevant question when a guy starts off 2 of 10, and it's topical too because the guys across the hall did something similar at halftime. And, Narduzzi answered. He said, no, not at all. You look at the passes. There was this. There was I think on the first play, he said there was a guy who was open, but Slovis didn't have time to get it to him because there was pressure off the left side where Carter Warren isn't playing, which bringing it back to the offensive line topic. And then he said, and then there was a drop and there was this and that. So he had explanations for everything. And so maybe that's what it is. Maybe it has nothing to do with being out of sync, being disjointed, or anything like that in the first half. Maybe it was all just bad luck. I'm inclined to think that after starting 2 of 10, and then, completing whatever he did on the final drive of the first half, 4 of 7 for 53 yards. Actually, when I say he started 2 of 10, that includes an incomplete pass to start that drive. So really, it was 4 of 6. 4 of his final 6 passes for 53 yards at the end of the first half, including a touchdown. And then going into the second half and going 20 of 29 for like 244 and 2 touchdowns and a pick, it certainly seems like he got better as the game went on, threw better, read better, made better decisions, and was just generally more effective. Almost like he sort of had to get into a rhythm with his receivers. Almost like he hadn't really had all that much game time throwing to these guys with the kind of routes that they need to throw to win games against the ACC and not just against FCS Rhode Island. And here I am going down this path again, complaining about that Rhode Island game. I don't know. Yeah, it still boggles my mind. I think that, I'm not going to say that cost them the Georgia Tech game, but their offense stunk. They scored 7 points through 3 quarters, and this was with their starting quarterback basically not really attempting to stretch out the passing game since the first half of week 2. 2.5 games without any real passing game to speak of. And the quarterback not even on the field for 1.5 of those games, and then the game when he actually did play just threw screens all day. And they ran the ball. I'm not saying that cost them the Georgia Tech game. I'm not saying they would have won it if he went out and threw for 450 against Rhode Island, but I don't think it would have hurt. Not at all. So that's another compounding factor, right? And we really, it's a cliche to say you're never as bad as you were when you lose, and you're never as good as you look when you win. It's a cliche, but there is some truth to that. There is some truth. This offense is not the kind of offense that's going to go 3 quarters and only score 1 touchdown. Now, Virginia Tech's defense looks pretty stout. They did just give up 41 or something to North Carolina, which is probably a better offense than Pitt has. So maybe they will go 3 quarters and only score 1 touchdown. I think they'll be better this week than they were last week. I think last week was exceptionally bad. And I think when they got rolling in the second half, they had 1 fumble by Vincent Davis, 1 interception by, on a pass to Carter Johnson, and then another fumble by Vincent Davis on the first play of a drive, which was an absolute killer and ended up leading to a Georgia Tech touchdown. Those things are brutal. Those things are drive killers, momentum killers. The offense finally starts to get a little bit of momentum, and they just shoot themselves in the foot with the turnovers, in addition to special teams penalties and then defensive breakdowns. So there's a lot of factors that I think went into sort of contributed to that offensive performance. And are there issues with Frank Cignetti? Yeah. I see a lot of, people on the message boards and Twitter talking about how predictable the offense is. Maybe that's it. I'm not smart enough to say if that's the case or not. I think there are things they could probably do in this offense that they don't seem to do a whole lot of or not enough of. I think... Yeah, honestly, I think 3 receivers, a tight end, and a running back should be this offense's sort of base formation. I don't think they've gotten that much out of having Ryan Jacoby out there as a second tight end and going with 2 tight ends and a back and 2 receivers, or going with 2 receivers and a tight end and a fullback and a tailback. I don't think they've gotten all that much out of those personnel groupings other than sort of situationally. I would get out there with 3 receivers and a tight end and the tailback. I would try and spread defenses out a little bit. They line up so tight, and then everybody's there, and then they try and run the ball, and there's just nowhere to go. There's no space. And I think Vincent Davis, Izzy Abanikanda, those guys do well with some space, and it gives the offensive linemen, I think, more opportunities to kind of block and just open some holes at the line of scrimmage. Because then once Vincent Davis and Izzy Abanikanda get that hole at the line of scrimmage, they're able to really make things happen at the second level. But they're not getting to the second level when there's 9 guys in the box. Well, how do you get 9 guys out of the box? You go out there with 3 receivers, spread out, and you start throwing it. You throw it, and you be a little aggressive with it. And if you need to work the intermediate range, the medium range stuff, like they did on those final 2 drives against Georgia Tech, work that stuff. Loosen up the defense with those things. Loosen up the defense a little bit with those kinds of throws. Get them to back off a little, get your running game going, and then use play action to take shots down the field. These are the kinds of things Pitt should be able to accomplish. I think the talent level, the coaching, I think Pitt is capable of doing what I just described. I really do. Because they did it to some extent. They showed that they could hit some of that medium and intermediate range stuff at the end of the Georgia Tech game. And I think if you can do that, you're going to have some success getting the running game going, which will inevitably lead to opportunities downfield off play action. They just haven't been able to get into a rhythm yet. They just haven't been able to get into sync. And I think there are a lot of reasons for it. I think the offensive line injuries have kept them from getting into a real cohesive rhythm. And I think the quarterback injury. I think Keaton Slovis missing the time that he missed, had a good deal to do with that. Now, they've got another game under their belt. I would expect them to be in a better rhythm this week against Virginia Tech. And, I would expect them to have a chance to go out and, maybe not score 50 points, because I think this is a good defense. It's going to, make it a challenge. But they should be able to go into the bye week at 4-2 with, an ACC win and a chance to stare down this final 6-game stretch of conference games and, have some success. Because, again, the Coastal doesn't look... The 2 teams at the top of the Coastal are Carolina and Duke. They're both 4-1 overall. I mean, I don't... Carolina gets more interesting as Pitt's offense continues to struggle, because it becomes a question of, can you score with Carolina? Can you win a shootout against Carolina? Duke, I'll sort of believe in as that game gets closer, and and if Duke continues to win, we'll see about both of those teams. But I don't think there's anybody in the conference, in the division at least, that looks like a giant killer. I think Georgia Tech will lose more games. Miami, it'll be interesting to see how they bounce back. I wouldn't be surprised if they go on a little bit of a run against ACC competition. But Virginia doesn't look good. We'll see about Virginia Tech, Carolina, and Duke. Bring up here, we got super chatters jumping in. We got people chatting already. I want to get into these comments and questions from everybody. I also want to tell you, before we get into that, about our friend Chris Gates. I've been telling you about Chris for a while now. ChrisGatesFitness.com. Do you guys know Chris? He's an online fitness coach from Pittsburgh. He's a huge Pitt fan. And he actually, like I say, he's an online fitness coach. He works with people from all over the world to help build muscle and burn fat and improve their health through fitness and nutrition. And I love Chris's approach, because he's not just about getting swole, although he's about that. And he's not just about like losing weight, although he's about that too, but he's about healthy lifestyle, about, making good decisions for yourself to achieve your goals. And it's great. He guides and supports his clients really every step of the way. When you tell him what you want to accomplish, and he lays out a plan for you, and you can just, show up, you put in the work, and you can have confidence that what you're doing is working. It's something. You can see the testimonials that he's got and the people who have gotten great results working with Chris. And like I say, he's a huge Pitt fan. He's a fan of Panther-Lair.com, and it's, he's obviously a fan of the podcast. And if you go to his website, ChrisGatesFitness.com, and you mention Panther-Lair, when you apply, you get 75% off your first month of coaching. That's a huge discount. Look, we've had different sponsors and promos on this podcast. You guys have heard me talk about Home Field and things like that, and they would give you like 15% off or something. Chris is going to give you 75% off your first month. If you go to ChrisGatesFitness.com, Chris Gates, it's Gates, ChrisGatesFitness.com. Mention Panther-Lair, you get 75% off, and he's awesome. This other thing too, he's got a free tailgating cookbook All right, free. It came out this week, just in time for homecoming. He's got 5 low-calorie, high-protein grilling ideas. You can go on the website, chrisgatesfitness.com. He posts about it on the Panther-Lair.com message boards. You can see it there. It's also on his Twitter page, at Chris, C-H-R-I-S, _Gates, G-A-T-E-S, at Chris_Gates. Go to his Twitter page. You can find the link to the free Tailgating Cookbook. 5 ideas you can have at your tailgate to eat healthy in the middle of football season. And I mean, look, I think we all struggle with that, right? Well, Chris has got you taken care of because he wants you to lead a healthy lifestyle, not just working out all the time and all you eat is, boiled chicken and rice. He wants you to lead a healthy, fulfilling lifestyle. ChrisGatesFitness.com. He supports us. You definitely should go check it out. He's a big Pitt fan. Pitt fans like to help other Pitt fans, right? So go check out ChrisGatesFitness.com. Thanks to Chris for supporting us here. Now, in the chat screen, we've got, if you want to get your comments and questions in here during the show, you can use that chat screen. You can put, make your comment, ask your questions. We'll respond to the comments, answer the questions. We get a lot of chat messages in there. If you want to make sure we read your comment or answer your question, you can be a super chatter. Click the little $sign down at the bottom. Throw a couple bucks to the podcast. We very much appreciate that. And we'll make sure we get to your comment and question. So JMCST5, love the old school Pitt email address handles there. JMCST5 says, with what we've seen, would you take Addison and Patty over Slovis and the current receivers? Who got the better end of the deal? So here's the thing, all right, with Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison on this team, this current team, they're 5-0. I don't have any doubt about that. I think they beat Tennessee, and I think they beat Georgia Tech with Jordan Addison. I think he is that good. I think he has that much of an impact. And it's not just about he would draw coverage away and give better opportunities to the other receivers. No, he's just a great receiver. He's a great receiving target. You think about some of the passes that haven't been caught this season, some of the passes that haven't been thrown. Look, Bub Means playing the end zone against Tennessee that goes for an interception. You think Jordan Addison lets that get off his hands? The play a couple, at another point when they were down near the end zone, Konate Mumfield has one go off his hands on a little slant. That doesn't happen with Jordan Addison. No, I don't mean to slight Bub Means or slight Konate Mumfield. I still believe in those guys. I think those guys can be really good. I think Mumfield can have a really good season. Jordan Addison was the Biletnikoff Award winner for a reason. And you can look at, Saturday's game. Some of the plays where a ball bounces off a guy's hands, or you just can't get to it, or you just can't make the play, or you just can't get open, or you can't create separation. Addison makes those plays. Addison catches those balls. Addison gets open. He creates separation. He's a great receiver for a reason. All right. And the reality of last season is Kenny Pickett and Jordan Addison did a whole lot of heavy lifting to carry that offense and carry that team. They weren't the only ones. I mean, there were a lot of guys who played really well for Pitt last year. A lot of guys made huge plays. ACC championship game, I can't take anything away from Eric Hallett and AJ Woods. Those guys, and Kalijah Cansey and Devin Danielson. I mean, those guys dominated in that game and played great, and it had as much to do with that championship as anybody. But to get to that point, Pickett and Addison were the guys. They were the ones who made the plays. They were the ones who carried the team. And so putting Addison on this team, on the current team, with Kedon Slovis, I really don't think they lose those 2 games. I think they're 5-0. Now, if you're saying I could have Addison or Slovis, it's one or the other. I'm probably taking Addison. I just think he makes that big of an impact. I think Kedon Slovis is a better quarterback than Nick Patty. I think he's the best quarterback on this team. I think he gives them the best chance to win. I'm very intrigued about the future potential of Nate Yarnell, but I think Kedon Slovis is the best quarterback right now. But I think Jordan Addison can make quarterbacks better. You get the ball to him, and you're going to have a chance to get a big play. And so I probably would take Addison. Ed Mahoney says he would take Addison as well. He's just that good. Let's see. Chris is a super chatter, says, now that NIL is okay, will the Golden Panthers return? I don't know if that organization's going to return. I think that there are some organizations and some groups coming together to try to use NIL to help benefit Pitt. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the Golden Panthers, though. All right, let's go up here and start off with the rest of the comments and questions. You want to make sure your comment gets read or your question gets answered. You can be a super chatter. BMX says, firing Frank Cignetti is where Pitt should go from here. I've seen better offenses at the high school level. I don't believe you. Is my response to that. I don't think you have seen better offenses at the high school level. I think that Cignetti has not been perfect, but a lot of guys have not been perfect. I think there are a lot of factors that have gone into the success or failure of the offenses. That's my thought of the offense so far. And I think Frank Cignetti has been around long enough. I think he knows how to call an offense. I think there have been challenges with this group. I think there have been positions that haven't played well. I think he's made bad decisions at times. I think he came out in the West Virginia game and had Keaton Slovis under center the whole time, and it didn't work well. And so they came out in the second half with Keaton Slovis in shotgun, and it worked much better. I don't agree with the game plan, as you know, for the Rhode Island game, whether that was Cignetti's decision or Pat Narduzzi's, whoever it was. I think they messed it up. But I also think that, he's called plays that should have worked. Either the quarterback didn't read it right, or he got indecisive, or the receivers didn't run the right route. I think there are... I said this to someone the other day. There are a lot of fathers to the loss on Saturday night. There are a lot. Frank Cignetti's one of them. And a lot of other guys are too. Brock Madonic says, what's more likely? Kenny Pickett throws for 2 touchdowns on Sunday and upsets the Bills, or Kenny Pickett gets picked off by one of his old buddies, DeMar Hamlin or Dane Jackson? I don't think the Steelers are going to beat the Bills. I don't know if Kenny Pickett's going to be a big part of it one way or the other. I don't think the Steelers will really stop the Bills' offense, to be honest with you. I think Josh Allen is one of the best players in the league. So, if you're looking for Steelers analysis, you've come to the wrong Chris. I think my guy Chris Carter does a much better job of it than I do. But if you're telling me, I think Kenny Pickett can throw 2 touchdowns, I wouldn't be surprised by that. But I don't think he's going to upset the Bills. I think I wouldn't be surprised if Kenny throws 2 touchdowns and gets intercepted by DeMar Hamlin or Dane Jackson, and the Steelers lose because they just can't stop the Bills' offense. So, don't really know how to answer your question there, Brock. Kind of all of it. Sam Snyder says, Cignetti is just too predictable. He always runs the ball on first down, just like the first play of the Georgia Tech game when Pitt threw the ball. And Keaton Slovis got hit because the protection didn't hold up, even though it was in a rainstorm, even though they were going against a team that had just given up 600 rushing yards in the previous 2 games. They came out throwing. That was actually a situation where they should have run on first down, and they didn't. They threw it on first down. Sam, you're saying he always runs on first down. They threw it on first down in the first drive of the game against Georgia Tech. Let me look. So the second drive, they ran it on first down. Third drive, I don't know what they were going to do. They had a false start, but then they ended up passing on 1st and 15. Fourth drive, they ran it on first down. Fifth drive, they ran it on first down and got 12 yards. Sixth drive, they threw it on first down. First drive of the second half, they ran it on first down. I'm just looking at the first play of the drive, actually. But on this, yeah. Look, does he run more on first down than he throws? Yes. Does he mix it up sometimes too? Yes. Does he mix it up as much as he should? No. Should he have run the ball on first down against Georgia Tech in the rainstorm? Yes. There may be predictable elements of this offense. I don't think running the ball on first down is one of them. I think they do tip their hand with formations. And when they bring in Ryan Jacoby, they're either running or throwing, but putting so if they throw here's the problem with the personnel grouping when you have Ryan Jacoby out there. This is no disrespect to Ryan Jacoby. When you bring him out there as a tight end, right? You're basically playing with 6 offensive linemen because he is an offensive lineman, even though he's wearing 84. The problem is you either run it, and teams are just going to assume you are running it, or if you decide to pass, you've effectively taken one of your receiving targets off the field. You're only playing with 4 now. And even though Ryan Jacoby caught a pass the other day for 3 yards, that was a monster play. They should never be throwing a ball to Ryan Jacoby. They should never be throwing the ball to the offensive lineman unless it's like a trick play. All right, so you either run, which is what they know you're going to do, and are expecting you to do, and they call it a defense to stop you from doing it, or you pass, and you've only got 4 receiving targets out there. You only have 2 receivers, a tight end, and a back, or whatever your personnel grouping is there. It just seems either way you're limiting yourself. It's the worst case scenario either way around. Either you do what they expect you to do, or you don't do what they expect you to do, but you're easy to defend because you only have 4 guys to stop. It just doesn't make sense. Ed Mahoney says, my opinion, Coach Frank Cignetti should not be fired. It's an overreaction, and who do you replace him with? I was shocked with the effort of the players, though. Thought they'd win this game by 17 points. Better bounce back. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you're not going to fire the coordinator at midseason. I don't see any reason or why that would happen. They should have won that game by several touchdowns. I mean, I think where they should be as a team, as an offense, as a defense, and all that, I mean, they should have won that game. But they didn't. And so you have to reconsider what you think of them and where you think they are and how good you think they are. G-Money says, I think Pat Narduzzi wanted another generic game. He thought the weather was going to affect the play calling. Or maybe G-Money is saying he thought the weather was going to affect the play calling. I thought the weather would, but then the rain sort of cleared out. There was a lot going on in that first half. It was raining a lot. Keaton Slovis was trying to play with a glove on his throwing hand. That didn't work well. He took it off before that touchdown drive at the end of the first half. And so maybe that improved his grip on the ball. Maybe he was holding onto it too long because the gloves are too damn sticky. I'm not sure. But, I think the offense was out of sync and disjointed. And I think there were a lot of reasons behind that. I think the weather was part of it. Maybe the game plan was part of it. But this shouldn't be that difficult. And going into this week, which is something close to it shouldn't be that difficult to... Oh, I was saying about the Virginia Tech game. I got distracted. Sorry, reading one of these comments coming up. I have a problem of doing that. This is pretty much a must-win game, I would say. You can't start 3-3, 0-2 in the ACC, or you're going to face some real questions heading into the bye week. Nick M says, Pitt has been showing us who they are all year. Some just don't want to accept it. Hanging with a Tennessee team that will finish 8-4 or 9-3 might be the highlight of the season. So that's an interesting thought there, Nick, and it's something that I've sort of been thinking about. I'm not willing to go down that path just yet, but there is a reality here. All right, the reality is we're coming up to the midpoint of the season. It's 5 games down. This Virginia Tech game is the midpoint of the regular season, and heading into the midpoint of the regular season, we are sitting here asking legitimate questions about who this offense is, what they do well, and how good they can actually be. That's a problem. That's a problem. Because at a certain point, and I think this is sort of what you're saying, Nick, a part of what you're saying, is if you get to this point in the season, you're 5 games in, almost, you're up to the 6th game, you're up to the halfway point in the season, and you're asking these questions, and you still don't really have answers to these questions. You still don't really know who this offense is, or what they can do well, or what they want to do, or what they want to be. If these offensive identity questions still exist at this point in the season, and I kind of talked about this a week ago, and I talked about it earlier in the week, you start shifting away from having questions to having answers. And the answers aren't good. Kind of like Nick said, it's sort of that old, that adage or cliche of like, if someone shows you who they are, believe them, and I think we still have a little bit of a window, Nick, where the questions aren't quite answered yet. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of answers that are concerning, but we're not quite there yet. Pitt has shown us maybe who they are, but because of all those circumstances, because of the offensive line injuries, because of the running back injury, and mostly because, most importantly, because of Keaton Slovis's injury, and not just the impact that, the impact on the team during the games when he was out, but the impact of, how that maybe slowed down the progress of the offense and slowed down the development and evolution of the offense with a new coordinator, new quarterback, new receivers, and all this stuff. I think that leaves the window open a little bit for the notion that this offense can continue to improve, that there's enough talent on this offense that they should be better than they've been, and that they can get better and play better and be more effective and just play better. That we don't quite have all the answers yet. But if we come out of Saturday and it's really bad again, and not just while Virginia Tech played really good defense, right? Because this past Saturday, it wasn't Georgia Tech played really good defense. Pitt stunk, right? I mean, Georgia Tech gets credit for that. And in the second half when their linebacker came back, I mean, he played really well. Georgia Tech gets credit for playing good defense. But Pitt blew that game themselves. Pitt played like crap on offense, right? For the better part of 3 quarters. If that's the case on Saturday, and Saturday, if it ends up being, the score last year, what was it? Was it 28-7 last year or something like that? If it ends up being sort of like a lower scoring game, 24-7 or something, 24-10, but you say, well, Virginia Tech just played them really tough, but but Pitt made some good plays. If you don't come out of it thinking, boy, they just played like crap again, and then you say, okay, that leaves the window open that maybe there is some evolution that can happen here, some progress and some development. But if they lay another egg, if they have another stinker, and God forbid if they lose again because of it, then you start getting to that point where, kind of like you're saying, Nick, they're telling us who they are. You know what I mean? They've shown us who they are, and we have to believe them. I'm not to that point yet, but the thought has crossed my mind. I mean, I'll concede that. The thought has crossed my mind, and again, coming up to the midpoint of the season, you start thinking that more and more. Let's see. Roy Speakham says, Chris, on the morning pit, you handled the issue of a goal no longer on the table without mentioning it by name. No sense in rubbing salt in the wound even further. Well done. Well, that goal, that bigger goal that existed out there, I don't think I really even mentioned it by name when it was still on the table. Like, even over the summer and the spring, I said that this team talked about having bigger goals. I said that this team seemed to have higher expectations for itself, but I never really named what that goal was or what those expectations were, because I just didn't want to say it. I didn't think it was time to say it until it became a reality, and that's, you push that off for another year. G Money says, you don't bring in Slovis, then run a power run game offense. I don't know what to tell you about that. I mean, their offense is what it is. I don't think they want to be a power run game offense. I think they want to have an offense that has a power run game component, and I think they want to be an offense that has some spread components, has some West Coast components, has a lot of different kinds of components. They want to be a versatile offense. It can do a lot of different things. It can be balanced and attack you in a lot of different ways. That's the goal. I think that's the objective. And they haven't been able to get into that rhythm yet. Let's see. Somebody named Chris, who's not me, has a lot of comments. Chris, how many of these should I read here? Man, you got a lot to say. Let's see. Well, all right. I'll just roll through some of these. Chris says, Pitt can only go as far as the running game will take it. Do you sense Pitt will prioritize run blocking so that the run can set up the passing game and control the tempo? Abanikanda, Hammond, and Davis are all game breakers and need the run blocking to establish an identity. The quarterback missed time from the abuse he took due to our terrible pass blocking. Our offensive line coach needs to get those guys prepared to play better, scheme better, or try young guys, but that O-line is where all of Pitt's problems begin. Chris, how much did the loss to Georgia Tech do to our recruiting? Pitt started out well in the West Virginia and Tennessee games, but the last 2 games really took the luster off the program this year. Pittsburgh wants to love the Panthers, but we have had our hearts ripped out so many times over the past 30 years. Pitt needs to win consistently to make the city believe in them. Let's see, Chris, you just keep going and going and oh, Chris says, Chris, can we get a Pitt logo or helmet behind you? It's like you were in a gray jail cell. Yeah, that's the wall, man. I don't know what to tell you. That's the wall behind me. That's the one I'm going to reply to. I've got. Let's see if you can see. You got a little picture on the wall. How about that? Is that add a little flavor to it? Day of the Dead picture. Hey, I like the wall because it's plain. You know what I mean? I could do like a backdrop or something like that. Although they got shadows today. The lighting must have changed, but I like the plain wall. I don't want any distractions here. I like you keep it. Keep the focus. Keep the focus. All right, Chris. I mean, you're saying about a lot of things. Let's see here. Byron Fleck was a super chatter. Byron says, assume Pitt loses to Virginia Tech. The season's over, right? Except for minor bowls, of course. Well, I mean, the season's over. I mean, Byron, it depends on what you define as that. Like, season's over in terms of being out of the race for the ACC and for the Coastal Division. Yeah, probably. I mean, I think if you start out 0-2, you're going to have a really hard time competing for the Coastal. So, yeah, I think that part is over. I think you have different goals that you enter the season with, and you're going to cross some of those off if you open, ACC schedule 0-2. And then it's just then it is. If you're 3-3 overall and you're 0-2 in the conference, I mean, you at that point are playing for bowl eligibility. You're jockeying for bowl eligibility, I think, and that's a far cry from what the expectations were. That's a far cry from what the goals were. It's a far cry from what I think was realistically, what we realistically thought this team could accomplish, and what this team realistically thought it could accomplish. But that's where you would be at that point. We'll cross that bridge if we get to it. G Money says, looks like Shane Simon and Bengali Kamara avoid contact like the plague. How about more Solomon DeShields, Brandon George, or Tyler Wiltz? Well, Brandon George was out for that game on Saturday. He did not play. He's hurt. I'm not sure when he'll be back. Tyler Wiltz actually got more playing time in that game against Georgia Tech than he's gotten all season. He replaced Bengali Kamara, played about 30-some snaps. I think the difference between Kamara and Wiltz in snaps, let me see if I can find it. I had the snap counts from that game. Oh, that's... You know what? Wait, I just want to bring it up because I want to look at it real quick. Yeah. Anyway, Wiltz played about 30-some snaps. Kamara played about 40-some. It was a difference about 12 or 15 snaps, which was almost entirely the Delta defensive package. They use that sub package on third down. Bengali Kamara plays in it. Tyler Wiltz does not. And so, in base defense snaps, Wiltz and Kamara were pretty close to dead even. And so that, I thought it was really interesting because I think it shows some indication about the coaches or from the coaches about what they think of Wiltz, how he's progressing, and also maybe what they think of Kamara. Now, Kamara had I forget how many pressures. He had a lot of pressures in that Georgia Tech game. He rushed the quarterback 10 times. I think he ended up with 5 pressures or something like that. He was really getting after the quarterback. And I think what you're finding from Kamara and Solomon DeShields is those guys can get after the quarterback. They each had a sack in that game, and they both end up rushing the passer a decent amount when they come out of that Delta defensive package. You're not seeing it as much out of the base defense, but I don't think Pitt blitzes as much out of the base defense. They like to blitz out of that Delta, where you have the 3 down linemen and the 3 linebackers, and you can really... You know at least 3 of those guys, 3 of those 6 are coming. You don't know which 3 it's going to be. And there could be as many as all 6 of them coming. And they mix it up, and they give different looks, and it'll look like 3 guys are coming, but 5 come. It'll look like 5 coming, but only 3 come. And either way, when you've got that disguise and misdirection and confusion, you're often able to get guys free, even if you don't overload blitz. You know what I mean? You don't have to send 5 or 6 guys to get a free rusher at the quarterback. You just have the quarterback and the O-line thinking there are 6 guys coming, and then run some twists and stunts and end up getting home with only 3. Now, you do need to be able to keep the quarterback contained, because twice in the Georgia Tech game, they blitzed out of the or I'm not even sure if they blitzed, but they brought pressure, created pressure out of the Delta package on 3rd and long, and Jeff Sims ended up scrambling. It was a broken play, and Jeff Sims ended up scrambling for first downs on 3rd down. It was actually Georgia Tech, I think, against the Delta defensive package, converted 3 third downs the whole game. They were 3 of 12 against the Delta. And 2 of the 3 were Jeff Sims scrambling, and the other one was the 3rd and 11 where the kid ran for 13 yards, where ran into a pile around 4 yards, and then pushed the pile all the way forward for another about 13 or so to pick up the first down. And so it's an effective defensive package. They're able to get pressure on the quarterback, force bad throws, or get sacks, or flush him out of the pocket. But if it's a guy like Jeff Sims, you're going to need to be able to contain. You have to be able to get to him. You know what I mean? You can't let him take off and scramble for 10 yards. When you blitz like that, there's often nobody there to kind of take care of him once he breaks contain and it's a broken play and he's scrambling. So that is something you have to watch out for. But I do think Kamara and DeShields are really good in that setting. I think they're really good at rushing the passer. I think they're really good at getting after the quarterback. They need to get better playing in the base defense. They need to get better with their run fits and their alignments and their details and knowing their positions and all of those things, which some of it comes with being a younger player. But I do think you're seeing the ascent of Tyler Wiltz. I think he's been playing better and better. And so I think you'll see him taking more and more snaps, not necessarily taking them away from Bengali Kamara, but getting more and more snaps in place of Kamara. I think you'll probably see that. I would expect, I don't know if Brandon George is going to come back. Or when he'll be back, or if it'll be anytime soon. I don't know if they'll try and work someone else in at that middle linebacker position so Servassier Dennis doesn't have to play every single snap again like he did on Saturday night. And he did. He played all 75 defensive snaps according to Pro Football Focus. You don't want to do that every game. You need someone else to come in and spell him for a little bit and give him a breather. I don't know who the next best option is there. Maybe Shane Simon, maybe Nick Lappy, the walk-on who had a block in the back penalty or a holding penalty or one of the other, a special teams penalty in that game on Saturday. You'd like to get another middle linebacker out there, though, to give him a break, and then just keep rotating with Wilson Kamara at the star linebacker position, and then Shane Simon and Solomon DeShields at the money linebacker position. All right, scrolling through here. Let me get down. Let's see. Chris says one final comment from Chris. I appreciate this. Says, Chris, I posted a lot, but this is my main question. Do you agree that many of Pitt's problems will disappear if they get the offensive line blocking well again? To some extent, yeah, I do. I mean, I think if you were going to boil it down to one thing, and I think there have been a number of issues, if you were going to boil it down to one thing, it's the blocking. Keaton Slovis, when we talk about indecisiveness, I think he's feeling the pressure in the pocket. And sometimes when it's not even there. And that can happen when you get hit a little bit, when the pressure comes a little bit, or particularly early in the season, it can start getting in your head a little bit. And I think it happened to Kenny Pickett early in his career. Keaton Slovis is a little later in his career. You'd like to think he's a little bit better adjusted to it, but he's gotten knocked around and played a game and a half before he had to miss time. I think that can affect you. I think he needs some clean games. You know what I mean? A game where he's relatively kept clean, relatively not under pressure. I don't know if Virginia Tech's going to be that or not. Like I say, their defense has been, by the numbers, one of the better defenses in the ACC. I'm just looking at their stats here. They have 10 sacks, though, through 5 games, which puts them 9th in the conference in sacks. So they're not necessarily, I mean, they're not, 2 sacks a game is not that impressive of a number. So, maybe they won't get to him with the same effectiveness. Maybe they won't quite get to him quite as much as some of the other teams have. But, again, when we come back to the offensive line, you're working with backups at a bunch of positions. If they have to go with the same line that they had against Georgia Tech, you're looking at Branson Taylor at left tackle, Marcus Minor at left guard, Jake Cradle at center, Blake Zabovic at right guard, and Matt Gonsalves at right tackle. And when we talked about all those guys returning, those 4 6-year seniors and a 5th-year senior, starting 5 all coming back, out of that returning starting 5, you only have one guy actually starting at his position. It's Marcus Minor at left guard. Jake Cradle is still in the starting lineup, but he's supposed to be at right guard, and now he's at center. And so you're dealing with one guy, playing that position that he came back to play. And so, that's going to impact things too. That's going to affect things as well. And for a unit that was counted on to be one of the strengths of the offense, one of the strengths of the team. And that was, that hasn't been the case. So yeah, to answer your question, Chris, do I think a lot of issues would be alleviated if the line was blocking a little bit better? Yeah, I do. But maybe that'll come with time. Let's see here. Mark Thurkel says, "What hat are you wearing? Can't figure it out." Sorry, I've already posted. This is Mount Lebanon 8 and under coach pitch baseball. That's right. I coached the Lime Lightning this year. We first and second grade team, 8 and under back in the spring. We weren't great, but boy, we tried, and it was a lot of fun. So that's that's Lebo baseball, baby, right there. That's what that is. But that's probably a good way to go out. Listen, make sure you tune in for the Morning Pit each morning, all right? We do this live show on Wednesday nights. It's a lot of fun. I have a good time with this back and forth conversation. It feels a little looser. We get into a bunch of different topics. The Morning Pit, though, is just it's 20 minutes, half hour of just Pitt talk every morning. News, updates, whatever's going on, whatever we need to talk about. We cover football, we cover basketball, we cover recruiting. Tomorrow's Morning Pit on Thursday is all recruiting. I think there's some great recruiting insight in there. You definitely want to check it out right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So click that subscribe button. Make sure you turn on notifications so you get an alert sent to your phone whenever we post new video content, whenever we go live for the Wednesday night show, or we go live for the post-game show. I don't know what time we're going to start after that Virginia Tech game on Saturday. At some point. Probably like 10 o'clock, 9:30. I don't know. But if you subscribe to our YouTube channel, click that subscribe button, turn on the notifications so you get an alert sent. You'll be sitting there watching the games at night and, Panther-Lair, they're going live. All right, I'm going to tune into the post-game show now. So make sure you do that. Like this video and subscribe to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I appreciate that very much. Of course, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Most comprehensive source, Pitt sports news on the internet. Football, basketball, recruiting. You find it all at Panther-Lair.com. And, of course, message boards where you can interact with hundreds and thousands of other Pitt fans. Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Definitely want to check you out there on the website. Thanks everybody who watched the show tonight. It's been a lot of fun. Thanks everybody in the chat screen, everybody who's commenting and asking questions. Thanks big time to the super chatters. We appreciate you guys. And thanks everyone who watches the video later in the week or listens to the podcast. I hope you've had a great week so far. Hope you have a great rest of the night. We will talk to you Thursday morning on the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. And then we'll talk to you Saturday night.